Coming up tonight, we visit our first port of call with Palma De Mallorca. We go for a swim, and we sit down with the fine lines, Sydney Brown. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day 2 of the cruise view from on board the Harmony of the Seas on our maiden transatlantic home to the United States. So again, I'm Picone, and today was Monday, October 24th, 2016, and it was our first of only 2 port of calls on this sailing. But first we're going to look at a couple of the top stories that were mentioned yesterday that are going on. The one being the WOW bands that were not functioning yesterday, which is a little odd since everything else seems to be working on board the Harmony except those, whereas Quantum was pretty much the opposite. The WOW bands were one of the few technologies that did function there. Today, went to get services, they reset it again, mine is now working, but the other WOW band in my cabin is still not working, even after 2 more replacements. Once mine was functional, that one is still not. So there's still some oddities going on with the WOW bands, and they seem to be having an awful lot of problems trying to get them to work, which is weird since there's very few on board this ship compared to the Quantum where every guest had one, and they pretty much all worked on that sailing. And beyond that, things have pretty much been smooth sailing with the rest of the technology. I had a couple little hiccups with the Royal IQ trying to book some entertainment last night where I had to change the time for reservation. It required me to cancel a reservation before I could make the new one, but then once I canceled it, I could not get to any location that would allow me to actually book the reservation again. But going to an iPad, which is located almost anywhere you look on the ship, that is one of the big advancements they made from the Quantum class. Those Royal IQ iPads are in pretty much every single lobby on every single floor of this ship, as well as a whole bunch of other common areas like throughout the promenade. And on there, it was pretty much no issue. As soon as I got in, went to the entertainment, and it was right there, allowed me to book. So I don't know what was up with the mobile app, but that's about the only thing I've seen weird going on with that. All the other stuff has been working. The compass has been working. There's a couple items missing, as I think I mentioned yesterday, for future days, but I'm sure once we actually get close to those days, that'll all get entered and it'll be more accurate. But for today, at least, it matched up to the compass and everything was accurate. There's one other little tip that's kind of been discovered so far. If you're on Quantum of the Seas, you probably realize you can get Apple push notifications. That's a side effect of the text messaging feature of the Royal IQ app. If you have an iPhone like I do and you want to use the Royal IQ app, the way that those notifications come to your phone from the messages or a phone call is through Apple's native push notification system, and that is on the OS level, not the app level. So for Royal Caribbean to allow those communications for people who do not have an internet plan, they've had to unblock access to the Apple servers to allow that through. And on Quantum, that worked to let you get notices from anything else, including news or Twitter, anything else that you might normally get notices from. And that remains true on board the Harmony as well. But the new oddity is that some of the websites that are traditionally open, like Royal Caribbean website, is not available. You can't even use the native Royal Caribbean app if you wanted to look up a future cruise or anything. Those are completely disabled. Trying to launch the Royal Caribbean app will just get you to the login screen and force you to buy internet. But using iMessages, you can actually send and receive messages from anyone you want without having an internet plan or paying for the $10 device text messaging fee, most likely related to that push notification issue. It's probably something where the servers that Apple uses are very similar, and to ensure the push notices are working 100%, they had to unblock some extra stuff, and that has inadvertently allowed the iMessages to function. So you can use iMessages to talk to anybody you want on board the ship as well as on land. It will only work with text though. If you try to send a photo, it will fail, and if you try to send an actual text message, a non-iMessage, so for somebody that has like an Android or other kind of device, it will not work either, so you'll be forced to buy an actual internet package to get those 2 features to work. So now, moving on to today, It was, as I mentioned, our first port of call in Palma de Mallorca, Spain. And the weather for today was absolutely perfect. Hopefully this continues the entire way across the ocean. We had a sunrise this morning at 7:39 right up over the island. It was beautiful as we were pulling in. Sunset tonight at about 7:43 p.m. So a little bit later than yesterday once we were off to dinner and everything was settled in, so I didn't get to check that one out as much as the sunrise this morning. Our high for today was 81 degrees, and it was a very warm feeling 81 out there. You could definitely have gone to the beach if you wanted. It's out of season for Spain at the moment, but you could certainly go there, as I think when we get to Florida it'll still only be about 81, 82 degrees. So it was certainly beach weather if you chose to do that. And we had partly cloudy skies. And there was no forecast of rain, but tonight we did have a passing shower come through that wet the upper decks on board. But currently it's a very nice warm evening out, and there's little to no wind at the moment. The captain mentioned a possibility of 6-foot seas tonight, but if they're out there, I'm certainly not feeling anything. And I think up to this point, you really could not feel any movement on board the Harmony. Past several sailings, I feel like I've said it a lot, that you just felt a little more movement than the sea showed, but today and for this journey up to this point, we really haven't felt any movement. If you didn't look at land, like at night right now and you can't see the ocean, you'd have no idea we're even moving, because this ship is just perfectly solid and smooth all the way through. So for arrival this morning, we're scheduled to get in at 8 a.m. We began to pull in a little bit before 7 a.m., so if you wanted to see us pull in, you had to get up a bit early. It was still dark out at that time. And ahead of us, arriving at 7 a.m., was actually another Royal Caribbean ship. It's not often you get to see two in port, and we were the only two ships in port today with the Rhapsody of the Seas, a Vision class ship of Royal Caribbean's, which was not docked at the same pier or even the same area of the port as us. We couldn't get a really good comparison, but she was right across the water from us, and we could clearly see her as we pulled in as well as throughout the day. And then tonight, the Rhapsody of the Seas arrived an hour before us this morning, and this afternoon left an hour before us, leaving at 5 o'clock. She actually started to drop her lines about 15 minutes early, and about 5 minutes before 5 was already pulling away and had a very quick out of port and on to her next port of call. There was unfortunately no horn battle, which we often like to see with two Royal Caribbean ships together, but she did sound her horn a couple times on the way out. And then, an hour later, the Harmony of the Seas went on her way as well. Ours, unfortunately, was not as smooth as the Rhapsody. We did start to leave before 6 o'clock, about 5:45. It seemed like we dropped our lines and were starting to move away, but it was a very slow crawl, and we almost immediately came to a stop and just sort of sat dead in the water for a good 15 to 30 minutes before finally starting to move again and head out to sea. No idea what the reason was. There wasn't any kind of sea traffic around us that we could see. When the Rhapsody pulled out, there were tons of sailboats that stopped for her. But things seemed pretty clear for us, so I'm not sure if they were waiting for something, and it never showed because we didn't even see a boat pull up to bring anybody over unless they were on the pilot boat. And just like yesterday, Gus, of course, loves his horn and used it very heavily on that departure once again. To the compass summary for the day. It was a port of call day, so that of course means the biggest part of the day was not officially listed in the compass, but was my excursion. And today I took a flamenco show at Sanamar excursion. That took place at 9:30 and lasted about 4 hours till 1:30 p.m. Had a couple different stops. First, we boarded a bus and traveled throughout the city with stops at Belver Castle, up on the hill, which you could see from the ship this morning as we pulled in, as well as then onto Lisieux Cathedral, which was clearly visible right across the bay from where the ship was docked, as well as during both the arrival and departure. And that was a very old cathedral with a lot of detail and architecture to look at over there. From there, we traveled inland probably about 20 to 30 minutes to the Sunamar dinner show theater, I guess, and had some Spanish tapas and watched a flamenco show. After returning, it was a surprisingly quiet day on the Harmony. There was not a whole lot of things going on, but there weren't a lot of people on board either. For the most part, the entire ship was operating. Almost every activity, at least every activity I saw, was running. All the water slides, the pools, but there were not a whole lot of people on board, probably because there were only 2 port of calls, so people are taking advantage of them. But it was a very relaxing day the rest of the afternoon, leading up to our 6 p.m. sail away, which once again was just like yesterday, the exact same time as our dinner. And tonight, unlike almost every sailing that Royal Caribbean has done, and I've complained about almost every sailing that I've done a show for now, it was night 2. It was not the captain's night. I expected it to be the captain's night, planned for the captain's night, had to rearrange my schedule once on board because it wasn't the captain's night, thankfully. And in addition to not being the captain's night, which is now tomorrow, the sea day, which is where it should be, it was also a brand new menu. One of the weird things is the captain's menu I've never liked. I don't know if it's a certain style they choose to have with the captain's night, but I've never had much luck finding it, and I often will skip it to get to the captain's reception a little bit early. Tonight, I had planned for that to happen, and looking at tomorrow's menu, that will happen. But tonight, the new Day 2 menu was the complete opposite. It was probably, without a doubt, the best menu that I have seen Royal Caribbean put together up to this point. The new menu system has a mix of new items, dynamic dining items, and classic items, and there's really not a whole lot of unique items on each menu, but a very large set of the traditional items that are available every day. Today, though, there were 4 entrees that I liked. So that was obviously a problem. So I got, for my starter, the mulligatawny soup. And then for my entrees, I got 2 entrees. The Old World honey and port spice ham, which was brand new to this menu, hasn't been offered on Royal Caribbean before, and it was absolutely delicious. They have ham in the Windjammer every once in a while. This was delicious, way beyond what I was expecting from it. The sauce that they used on it was absolutely incredible, and it was an all-around great dish, and a brand new one that has never been prepared on board any ship before tonight. And my other entree, I did the beef stroganoff, which has been used a couple times. It was first a special on our Independence Transatlantic about 4 years ago. It has since been added to the regular menus, and it was on tonight's menu. They also had a couple other new items, including a chicken parmesan, as well as the traditional beef bolognese pasta. And as I mentioned, this was a brand new menu for the crew to put together. This is a 13-night sailing. The Oasis and the Allure have traditionally only done 7-night sailings. The Harmony has a brand new menu that is being introduced just for her. She's the only one that's currently using it. And this is a 13-night sailing. She has only done 7-night sailings and shorter up to this point. So on board this sailing, there will be 6 nights where the crew must prepare a menu that they have never prepared before, that no ship has ever prepared before. And sadly, they will never prepare again because they do not have another transatlantic scheduled. So those 6 menus will never be used in their regular rotation once they get to Fort Lauderdale. But tonight's Day 2 menu was one of those, and as I said, it was absolutely fantastic. And hopefully they move it up in the ranks and make it one of the more regular menus on shorter sailings, because it's certainly worthy of it. It was a great menu. And it was a little slower service today because the crew wasn't used to it, but it was worth the extra wait for it. Then following dinner tonight, I had 2 showings of the Fine Line, which is the AquaTheater show. The first one I did stand by and watch from up by the rock climbing wall. It is an absolutely perfect view. If you don't have tickets for it or you want to see it again, it's worth going there. It is actually, depending on your taste, it's possibly the best view you can get because you can fully see everything. You have a clear view of all the dancers. Nobody can get in your way. You can see everything at once. And then the 11 p.m. show, I sat down in the 4th row, the first row that has regular seats, the more comfortable seats, so that I would be out of the splash zone. We did get a couple droplets throughout the show at different scenes, but for the most part stayed dry in that spot. But there, you do have people in front of you, you have your view blocked a little bit, so ironically, even though that is a ticketed spot, the standby area is probably the best place to view it, even though it is not ticketed or reservation required. So for the Fine Line, it is a brand new AquaTheater show, something that hasn't happened in 5 years. The Oasis, of course, has Oasis of Dreams, the very first one that was ever created by Royal Caribbean, and the only AquaTheater show that I have seen. That was very focused on the water, the fountains, showing off all the technical aspects that the theater could pull off, and really showing what the cast could do. It was kind of a, look, we have water, here's what we're going to do with it kind of show. And as you watched it, it was very slow and meticulous and kind of showed off those different skills and functionalities that they had. Tonight's show, complete opposite. It was all high-paced, high-action, really kind of in your face, here's how good we are kind of show. Felt like a very middle ground between Star Water, which has a very classic and beautiful vibe to it, in 270 on Quantum of the Seas, and the 270 show on Anthem of the Seas, Spectra's Cabaret, which I haven't seen yet, but I've seen clips of, has a very modern and abstract performance to it. Tonight's show in the AquaTheater falls right in the middle. It has a lot of those very beautiful elements and scenes to it like Star Water, but it is very edgy, very hard and sort of new age like compared to some of the traditional shows they put on. And it had a lot of new elements that have never been done in an AquaTheater before, such as a high wire routine that takes place towards the end of the show, as well as some jumping lines that they run across the AquaTheater, and a whole lot of aerial acts throughout. I wasn't expecting as much as they did. They pretty much used it almost in every single scene throughout the entire show, which is really neat. And one of the funnier parts of it is that while they're flying over you, their hair is wet, their clothes are wet, so they're actually dropping water all over the audience and really kind of brings everybody into the show very well. The only issue with the show, and this is something a little bit different than the Oasis had its own issue, where when she set sail, she dropped soot all over everybody watching the AquaTheater show. So when you left, you'd often be covered in soot with black spots all over you. To correct that, they had to permanently lock the funnels in place. What was going on was the retractable funnels had no insulation around the end of the pipes. It was colder in Fort Lauderdale than they expected, and the soot would start to stick to it and then flake off and drop on people. Tonight, there wasn't any issue like that. It did rain though, but in the AquaTheater we were protected with everything above us. But ironically, the water from the rain that fell above us was leaking from the abyss loading area onto the crowd, and it pretty much got everybody covered in brown and black spots. So when you left there, all your clothing was filthy and really kind of ruined with all these spots. So they got rid of the soot, but the water from the rain is actually worse because it was very filthy stuff and everything was covered in spots after only a couple minutes of a light drizzle on the ship that didn't even touch us, but the dripping from above did. And speaking of water, moving on to our venue tour for tonight. It is a different one than I had originally planned. With the captain's reception and things moving around, I had to swap things, so instead of tomorrow being focused on these items, today the AquaTheater uses water and a pool, so we have the pool tonight. Royal Caribbean has long been known for their expansive pool decks. With the introduction of the Oasis class, this was taken to new levels with 5 distinct areas on deck number 15, 4 of which are separated by the cavern of Central Park. Harmony of the Seas expands beyond pools to add water slides as well. The trio of water slides, called the Perfect Storm, are located at the forward end of the deck, with the port side featuring a pair of traditional slides called Typhoon and Cyclone. The third slide, Supercell, lets out into the beach pool area after taking riders on a dizzying spin around its giant bowl. The traditional main pool is located on the port side. This pool, unlike its sisters, does not feature the traditional tiered seating, making it very similar to the sports pool. The second pool on the port side is then the sports pool, which is used to hold various pool activities such as volleyball throughout a sailing. The Harmony of the Seas has removed the H2O zone and replaced it with an upgraded version known as Splashaway Bay. The new water jungle gym is designed for all kids on board and features its own kid-sized water slide. The fourth pool area, located on the starboard side forward, is the beach pool. This pool, introduced with the Oasis of the Seas, features a zero-entry pool that allows the water to flow under the lounge chairs, along with a beach theme to the walls and floor. Unlike her sisters, Harmony features additional chairs in place of the tables and beach umbrellas. First introduced on the Freedom class, the Harmony of the Seas features a cantilevered whirlpool on either side.
Well, very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, welcome to beautiful Fort Lauderdale.
The adult solarium is then located all the way forward. This area has been changed from her sisters with the introduction of a tiered layout similar to the Quantum class, down onto deck number 14. While there are several hot tubs and a misting area, the solarium on Harmony does not feature any kind of actual pool, relying on a sectioned off area of the main pool deck to be used for that purpose. Located within the adult solarium, though, is the Solarium Bistro. The Solarium Bistro, located in the adult solarium, offers a similarly relaxing sanctuary from the chaos of the Windjammer. Serving a smaller, more upscale and healthy buffet for both breakfast and lunch, the Solarium Bistro is a complimentary venue, while a sit-down dinner service is available for an added fee. Starting with the transatlantic, the Solarium Bistro is also now home to the chef's table.
Pleasant good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a fantastic day at sea. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this beautiful venue and our exclusive chef table. My name is Kirk, and I'm the chef which will be guiding you through your menu tonight. Just want to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm proud to say I'm coming all the way from Jamaica, and the main job I do on board, I'm in charge of taking care of the chef's table. I'm also in charge of Solarium Bistro, and I'm also in charge of taking care of 2,200 hungry crew members who continuously eating around the clock. All right. So just to give you guys a little bit of insight to my culinary journey with Royal Caribbean, I've been with Royal Caribbean for the last 15 years. I joined the ship back in 2000. My first ship was the Sovereign of the Seas. Then I moved over to the Radiance of the Seas, where I spent about 10 years. And then I went over to the Allure of the Seas. And now I'm on the biggest and the greatest of them all, the Harmony of the Seas. So tonight's dinner gonna be a 7-course meal. For each course, we'll be pairing with a different wine. The waiter is gonna take care of the wine. I'm gonna take care of the food. All right, so just sit back, relax, and allow us to take you through this wonderful experience. Tonight's experience is gonna be so wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, so you wanna tell your friends next time you're on board. I'm sure you're gonna wanna try the chef table. This menu will change at least every 3 months, so you will at least get the experience to try something new. All right, so you wanna tell your friends and family to come and check us out.
So that is obviously a much enhanced pool zone with all those extra slides added. I haven't done any of them yet. I will at some point during the sailing, and I'm sure on that day I'll include it in the compass, but I haven't done it yet, so I can't really comment on it. And for the most part, nobody's really used those pools yet because it is only day 2 and it was a port day. But they're certainly beautiful to check out and look at, especially at night, to come out here and look at them all lit up in different colors with all the LED lighting that they have on these ships. So now, moving back from our venue and dining, we're going to go back to the Fine Line and the AquaTheater as we have our first interview of the sailing. One that's kind of cool. I've been following her on Twitter and Instagram for a couple months now, ever since the Harmony first set sail. We're going to sit down with Sydney Brown. So today I am joined by Sydney, who is an acrobat in the Fine Line on board the Harmony of the Seas. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So could you provide a little bit of a background on yourself?
I started gymnastics when I was 1.5 years old. My parents brought me to like a parent and taught class, and from there I trained artistic gymnastics till I was 15, and then I switched over to power tumbling. Did 4 years of power tumbling, and then I joined the Oasis of the Seas when I was 19 for my first contract.
And with a lot of Royal Caribbean's entertainers, they haven't started as aerialists, they've kind of picked up those skills. How did you become part of the aerialists?
Yeah, so like my background is obviously acrobatics, but on board there's a lot of opportunities for us to learn many different flying elements in the shows. So it's been kind of cool to be able to come here and like grow and learn new things. So I've gotten to do a lot, yeah.
And then with the Harmony of the Seas, they've added the airless to the AquaTheater, something that has not been done before. Up to this point, it's been Centrums and 270. So how has transitioning to an outside theater affected your routines?
We're obviously challenged sometimes with weather. It can be pretty windy or rainy. For the most part, with the flying, it's okay. If we get up to, I think it's 14 knots of wind, we have to cut the flying in the show just due to safety reasons. But another aspect is like it being the aqua show, like we're wet. So sometimes when I'm hanging on to like the acrobat that I do in one of the numbers in the show, my grip is not so great. We have this sticky spray that I'll spray my hands with, and it only lasts for so long. So sometimes I'm like death gripping the apparatus, but yeah.
And then with this show, there's a whole bunch of innovative things. What was it like the first time you heard about the concept for the fine line?
The first time I heard about it, there's all these like super extravagant ideas, and a lot of us were like, well, how is that going to work? Like, you know, how are we going to have like a guy walking on a high line on a ship that's rocking in the ocean, you know? But it's kind of cool to see everything come together. And yeah, there was things that obviously like they didn't work out, but there was things that made it into the show, which surprised us, but it actually looks really cool and it works.
Yep, I've seen it 4 times, so it's definitely cool to watch.
Yeah.
Then one of the biggest stunts, or at least the coolest to watch that you do, is where you're walking on air and you actually walk in a full loop. What is that like?
So I'm in like a halo harness, and it's the 3D flying section part where I'm flying over the audience. But the whole time I'm doing that, I'm squeezing my abs, trying to stay, first of all, because the harness allows you to move in like a 360 degree spin. So I'm trying to stay straight, 1, and 2, just the moments where I have to flip up like this and then come down like this are the hardest. It's cool to be able to do, and like I love looking at videos from the side because I think it looks great, but that was challenging to learn.
Yeah. And then when you're in that harness, the ship's obviously moving around you. So how much does the ship's movement get felt through that whole system?
It's surprisingly not too much. Like when we're doing the show, like when I'm flying, I'm not really focused on the movement of the ship, but you know, you have to make adjustments here and there, but it's something you just get used to. I mean, this is my 4th contract, and it's just part of the show now.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's a whole bunch of different apparatuses that you're using throughout this show. Almost every scene seems to change it up a little bit. What is your favorite apparatus?
My favorite is the acro light, the big light that I'm hanging on to. It's also the hardest. It's more of like a rewarding number for me. Like when I finish it, it's you know, you feel good when you have like a solid performance on it, and it's hard, but it's my favorite.
Yeah. And then with that, you're on a system that is holding you in place. There's a couple scenes where you're actually being dipped into the water. How do you build a trust to know that it's going to lift you up when it's supposed to?
For me, it's more trusting the people in charge of it. So there's so much communication underwater. We can hear the music underwater. We can hear our stage and production manager giving the cues. We've got a couple of scuba divers who actually, like, as soon as I enter the water, I just go like this, and I get a regulator, and put it in my mouth, start breathing, and we hear like it says "foy" in 3, 2, 1. So you take that breath, throw the regulator out, and then you start to rise up. So it's more like I trust the system. And hey, if it were to fault or whatever, I've got people in the water that are right there to give me air again, and I can unclip and we can sort it out. But yeah, it's a completely different show underwater.
Yeah. And then there's an opening scene, one of your first airless moments, where you kind of dip in the water and then you come out and you drip all over the crowd. It always gets a big reaction.
Yeah.
How did that scene kind of come about?
It was choreographed that way. When we first started rehearsing, obviously we didn't have an audience. So when we did the show for the first time, we were actually super surprised on how much reaction we get at that section. And we didn't realize we were dripping that much water either, just in rehearsals. But yeah.
And then beyond the fine line and on the Harmony of the Seas, you're on social media as well. I've been following you on Twitter and Instagram, and you've been going all over the place doing handstands in really picturesque areas.
Yep.
How did that sort of get started?
Well, handstands are my favorite, and ever since I started traveling, everywhere I go, I do try and get like a good handstand shot. One day I want to make like a photo album of, you know, all the places I've been and all the handstands I've done around the world, but yeah, it's just kind of my thing.
Yeah. And then if there was anywhere in the world that you could do a handstand, where would it be?
There's, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but there's this, I forget what it's even called, but in Norway there's a cliff, and it like, the cliff sticks out over, I don't know, I don't even know what it is, like a valley it looks like, but right there. Right there would be sweet.
Yeah.
One day.
So thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Is there anything that you would like to say to the people?
If you're on board Harmony or coming to cruise, come check out the shows, and yeah, you're gonna love the ship.
All right.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you to Sydney for taking the time to talk to me. I think that was really interesting. There's so many cool things in the AquaTheater shows, and there's so many new tricks and technology they're using in the airless part alone with this new show at the Fine Line. So it's neat to hear about all those different things that she's up to. And of course, be sure to follow her on Twitter and Instagram as I do. She's always posting those handstand pictures from all around the world now that she's done with Europe and headed to the Caribbean with the Harmony. I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of new locations for her to get pictures at. So that about does it for today's episode. Before I go, I want to mention one thing. Tonight, if you've seen me looking off from the camera, that is because, well, tomorrow is our first preview sea day before our lengthy one at the end of the sailing. We have a couple hundred extra guests on board. There's a whole bunch of birds that have decided that Harmony of the Seas would be their new home, and they've joined us tonight. All night they've been flying around the boardwalk, Central Park. They're all over the adult solarium and up here on the pool deck. Pretty much on any of these outside decks, there's just swarms of them all over the place and landing, and some of them are really getting spooked, it seems like, especially in the adult solarium where there's a lot of weird stuff to the design of that ceiling. They seem to be getting trapped and confused a bit. But hopefully once we get to port in 2 days, they'll leave and stay there. Otherwise, they could be in for a long journey back to the US. So that does it for today's episode. Once again, I am Picone, and stay tuned for the links.